Hey, RetconRaider here, with special thanks to the Raiders, the fine folks who help make these videos possible, including but not limited to Dragon Matrix 7, Mathew Smith, Revenant, Alois, Drakiith, ERieB23, Egg, EgonAlter, Emile, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Nathan Welch Jr., OverlordPherom, RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Tomasz Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, let's get started. And welcome back to the alpha for Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, as today we catch up with some old friends. But first, we of course have our level ups to take care of, which, it turns out are actually a lot more straightforward than I initially expected. Basically, as I said last time, each one of these classes is essentially a semi-linear tree, where each node does give you some slight options based on the class, so that you do ultimately have some control over the direction your character might take, at least under normal circumstances. In the current alpha build, of course, they dropped us in at level 15 with our choices already made up to that point, so we are essentially locked into whatever path they predestined for us right now. I was also expecting us to be able to multi-class, but apparently, at least in the alpha, that's not an option. We have to pick a tier 2 career to advance to, and careers are locked based on your tier 1 career, the one we started with, which in our particular case as a soldier means we can only go veteran. I'll also note that with our full party of 6, we will be able to put at least one character into each advanced class, so we'll be able to poke at everything. Now, starting with Retcon, he's our most straightforward level up. Coming out of soldier, he only has one option, and our first point put into veteran just unlocks the basic class skill, which in this case is right tool for the job. At a glance, it essentially just offers a stacking series of accuracy bonuses, as long as we consistently swap our weapons between each attack, which shouldn't be too hard to do. We're currently toting 3 separate weapons, the chainsword, the auto pistol, and the auto gun. And then as we reach higher ranks and unlock additional ability slots, we'll be able to further modify that basic ability, making it even more potent or giving us more uses for those stacks of versatility. And then Argenta. Again, she's coming into this as a soldier, meaning that she has no choice but to go veteran. So she picks up the exact same skill. That'll give us more incentive to swap back and forth between her bolt gun and flamer. Jumping over to Abelard. Interestingly, he actually has access to 3 of the advanced classes. Fighter apparently has access to Assassin, Veteran, and Vanguard, which is single target damage, versatility, and defense, respectively. The Vanguard itself, which is the one we're going with for him, is also interesting in that it kind of works 2 separate ways. One way for the fighter-type characters who are going into it, like Abelard, but then separately for leader-type characters who are going into it, like Cassie, though we'll chat about that in just a second. Also of note, you'll notice as we click on it, we actually get a series of characteristics and skills that are highlighted. Apparently this one specific Tier 2 class comes with base character bonuses. I'll note that none of the other classes currently do that, so that's a pretty clear sign that they're still working on this whole class system in general. I imagine there might be Tier 3 classes at some point as well, or more options, such as multi-classing. It's kind of hard to say at the moment, but I guess we'll see where that goes as we hit the beta. I think this also kind of implies that Vanguard might eventually be accessible by the soldier as well, because at least a few of these characteristics and skills do overlap with soldier more than they do fighter, at least the demolitions and agility side of things. Now, another thing of note here is that unlike every other advanced class, Vanguard actually comes with 2 starting abilities. The core class ability, Unyielding Beacon, which grants stacks of Unyielding every time the Vanguard is attacked. That grants additional resolve, which in turn is what determines how much momentum you automatically gain each time that character activates. And then they also get a variable ability, which is drawn from a special Vanguard list. And these are also interesting because this is where you start seeing how it plays a bit differently between a Fighter Vanguard and a Leader Vanguard. For example, a frontline Fighter Vanguard like Abelard would likely be more interested in Defensive Stance or Wall of Rockcrete, a basic defensive and a basic healing ability respectively, ones that will help keep him in the fight. But a character like Cassie would get much more use out of Disposal, which, for someone like Abelard who's already on the front line, would be a friendly fire nightmare. But with Cassie, she could simply point at someone and have all of her allies shoot at them. Presumably remotely, it doesn't specify range, but I'm assuming that's how it works. And then, on a similar note, Fight Me is a dual ability which works slightly differently depending on whether you're coming in as a fighter or a leader. As a fighter, it only targets yourself and becomes an omnidirectional short-range taunt. But in the hands of a character like Cassie, who has the Voice of Command leader ability, it can instead be used as a ranged crowd control maneuver, which is an interesting twist. I like the added variety. As for Abelard, we're going to keep this simple for now. We've got very limited healing ability, just Cassie and then Pascal once per fight. So we will grab Wall of Rockcrete. That key's off Unyielding, so it'll give him a nice scaling heal based on how much fire he's been drawing. We'll eventually be able to unlock 2 additional abilities as well. Oh, and one last note. While it is confusing at a glance, all of the nodes on the advancement track are sorted by shape, so you can use that to get an idea of when or how many of each type of advancement a class will get.
Yes.
Next up, we've got Adira, and coming out of Adept, she's got 2 options, but we will take her into Assassin. This one's actually pretty straightforward. I mean, first up, you'll notice, of course, we don't get the characteristic and skill bonuses that we saw in Vanguard. Again, this is just an unfinished alpha. But what we do get is the basic Extermination Mark ability, which, at a glance, is kind of underwhelming. It takes a full round to set up, and then grants extra damage on a single attack. But much like with Unyielding or the right weapon for the right job, we'll eventually be able to unlock abilities or modifiers, which will further customize that to fit our playstyle, or just make it more potent in general. That's it for Adira, for now. Which brings us to Cassia and Pascal, who will both be going Strategist. And that is because, unlike the other advanced classes, Strategist does not have a core ability. Instead, it has 6 different stratagems to choose from, 3 of which are defense-oriented and 3 of which are offense-oriented. And given that they ultimately can only choose 3 stratagems each, I figure we'll just lean into that. We'll have Cassia as our backline commander, lean into the defensive abilities, and then we'll have Pascal as our resident sociopathic cyborg, go full offense. As an adept, his abilities are more offense-oriented anyway. So that, I feel, is a fairly nice fit. And that's pretty much it. All of our characters are now level 16. And while we didn't have a lot of options on exactly how we could develop our characters here, again, in the full version of the game, we'll have had 15 other choices prior to this one to help shape how we wanted them to play. We're just very limited in the current alpha, but I do look forward to seeing how much more versatile it gets, how much more control we have over character direction once we hit the full launch. That said, thusly empowered, let's go flex our new muscles. We'll have words with our old buddies over here. Maybe we'll even get some answers. Though I suspect we'll just end up with a lot of cargo and corpses, but Such is life in the grim dark future. Oh, good. I'm glad we just sat here and watched that happen. Now look who's here. Isn't that the bleeder who did our boss in? Knife him!
Submit, and you'll die quickly.
Show them no mercy.
Oh, okay, so this isn't the same guy. He's just limping for other unrelated reasons. Slightly confusing, but sure, why not? Okay, so let's flex our new abilities. First, we'll slap an extermination mark on the Anver's limping leader. And then we'll pick someone off. I guess we should clear some space right in front of us. Let's also slap Forewarning on Abelard. Actually, oh, nice. Twofer. And now Forewarning.
Anything else?
Now let's try out Kill Zone. You have to remember this is a zone placement, not an AoE. And let's get rid of this guy. Oh. Heads up. That guy avoided the zone, but that's fine. We'll just hit him with a cone instead.
As the Emperor commands, I act.
No, that's too close. Yes, perfect. Now switch off to the bolter. This will give us 1 stack of versatility. Oh, hey. John Woo came back for a second there.
I have read tomes of military tactics.
Abelard would be a good target, but let's go for Argenta. Lay down another burst of fire.
Not a servitor.
Oh, shoot, okay. I thought we could still do a straight burst, but that's fine. Backline's clear. And they are getting nice and clustered for Abelard. I do appreciate that. Very nice. Now we'll switch off to the autogun proper. And that was even nicer. Wow. All right, Abelard, you've got what's left. Bring the thunder. Okay, yeah, we're good. Just had to make sure he didn't have any weird status effects or anything.
At your beck and call. Indeed.
Okay, okay. Not terrible. Really? The Anvers seem to have a really complicated power structure. Or, you know, they just forgot to set the leaders to the right faction. Does precision mitigate chances of friendly fire? Hey, look at that. It all worked out. Drop a new mark on the boss leader. Refresh kill zone. Let's get some machine spirits in the mix, too. You know, sometimes I regret triple specializing our rogue trader, but it is hard to argue with that dodge chance. Momentum!
Power resides in the will of the righteous. Doubt is for the weak. You, my emperor!
And just like that, it's over. The Anvers lay dead once more, and the civilians have wasted no time in resuming their conversations right atop the steaming corpses. Okay, yeah, this has to be placeholder stuff. That's the exact same note we found on the flamethrower-toting Anvers. And there's no power axe here. That guy was definitely wielding a power axe. Not to mention, that's like our 4th or 5th knuckle duster at this point. That is feeling a mite bit excessive. Alright, well, I guess we'll just move on. Let's go check in with Hieronymus.
Victory awaits.
The Emperor protects, my son. Interesting. Reverend, you'll be happy to hear that we found and destroyed the cultists in the Shadow Quarter. A grim smile brightens his features, and he makes the sign of the Aquila. I hope that their suffering was commensurate with their sins. Yeah, maybe, but speaking of sins, Is it true that the pirate Dens was one of your most generous donors? Yes, it is. Over the course of his life, that reprobate had burdened his soul with many vile and egregious sins. His confessions were akin to a grand catechism, listing humankind's imminent vices and enormities. It was all the more painful for him to realize that, of all the heinous acts he had committed, not one had been forgotten by the Emperor. Dens Belardo was afraid of death, and that which would wait him after. He hoped to atone for his misdeeds, yearned to convince, if not the Emperor, then himself at least, that he had been more than a conscious speck of malignant mold his entire life. Right. I have a really hard time getting a read on this guy. Zero tolerance for corruption, but knowingly accepting money from a pirate in hiding. I see. May the soul of Dens Belardo, the Emperor's unworthy servant, one day be cleansed through suffering. Sure, why not? That might as well happen. Maybe I'm just not familiar enough with the Imperial faith. I think I've mentioned it before, but the vast bulk of my knowledge about the Warhammer setting comes from the specialty games, Necromunda, Gorka Morka. So I'm a lot more familiar with the lore surrounding the gangs of the Underhive, or those goofy tribes stranded on the planet Angelus, as opposed to the day-to-day life of an Imperial citizen.
None shall stand in my way.
Okay, I think we're pretty much done here. Let's head back down to the Shadow Quarters and hit the pub. I'm bored. I wish they'd try to break out again. Nah, they won't risk it. They've learned their lesson. Let's go shoot some cans instead. Fancy a wager? Ah, right. I mean, we had already more or less figured that out, but apparently that whole sector is locked down for quarantine. But again, there must be a way that we can get in there. I assume that's what Jae wants to talk to us about. Check the sides real quick.
New challenge for me?
Nothing. Alright, let's head in. I wonder if we will actually encounter any of the gangs from Necromunda. I mean, obviously, we're pretty far from the center of the Imperium, but I'm sure at least a few of them travel. Oh. Nice little spot. It's good to see folks enjoying themselves. Even the air in here feels nicer to breathe. They really need to find a better way to display that floating text and the dialogue readout on the right. I hate how it keeps popping open and closed and just generally makes it difficult to read things. I think that's my first real point of criticism for the alpha so far.
An entire establishment dedicated to unproductive and parasitical pursuits.
A waste of station space. Under the floor, you can see the remains of the void ship's life support system. It seems that whoever dismantled the vessel decided just to leave it in place. Oh, okay, so the bar is actually built right into an old void ship. That's ambitious. And I guess we can't go that way.
I'll lay claim to the stars.
I suppose that explains why there was a giant ship just floating behind the Shadow Quarter. That's actually this place. There's Jae over there. And Octavia. That must be our pirate contact. I believe that's the one that
Follow my lead.
Blaine recommended we talk to. Stuck to the plates are lumps of sawdust, toxic waste that is sometimes passed off as ordinary nutritious starch. Hey, it's all fiber.
What a shameful failure.
Boo. Oh, okay. Huh. I really thought melta-charges were basically your way around jammed locks. But no, apparently failing a check just straight up locks you out of every
Victory awaits.
method of opening. In which case it really shouldn't have cost us a melta-charge. That feels unintended. Rough day? You have no idea. I just might. That's the second bottle you've downed. Then what happened? And what does that unholy scion of a Grox and a Brahan want from me? Wait, what? Okay, I think, hold on. Don't think so, Ashmag.
My luck right now.
And that's the problem. The person she's supposed to be talking to did not move onto screen, so all their dialogue is appearing off-screen. Either that or the camera didn't shift far enough up. And tell Braska to come himself next time. There they are. Hi. Oh, yep. And then the bartender's dialogue is trimmed off at the top. So that would really strongly imply the camera was supposed to move further up. Akji, Shireen, light of my eyes, can't you see my soul is full of sadness? Have you no heart at all? Let go of your material concerns and let me grieve in peace. Oh, and we're talking. Have we met somewhere before? The brunette looks at you with the glassy eyes of a drunk, and you notice the 2 empty bottles that had been keeping her company before you arrived. She looks completely out of place in this dingy, smoky bar. The fancy attire, the abundance of jewelry, the implants plated with precious metals. Her appearance not only screams wealth, but also audacity. For only an audacious person would flaunt their wealth in a place like this. Side note, with an appearance like that and a portrait, I suspect that Jae here is one of our potential companions. She smiles somewhat groggily as she examines you over the glass that is raised to her lips. Greetings, Shireen. With whom do I have the honor of speaking? I am Rogue Trader. Actually, just call me, Retcon trader. Well then, here's to our meeting, Retcon trader. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that you're someone special, since you've already been granted an audience with the Liege of Footfall himself. It's always a pleasure to make the acquaintance of someone powerful. She takes a sip and pauses, then resolutely sets her glass aside and turns to you. And the timing couldn't be better. Jae Heydari, at your service. Professional trader, shrewd commercial broker, and may Ozzy steal my tongue if I'm lying, the most honest dealer on Footfall. Nonetheless, we all have our problems, and at times even one's many merits aren't enough to solve them. Perhaps it would be no trouble for a person with your kind of power and standing to assist someone with my kind of predicament? Well, that would really depend on what you need from me. You see, Shireen, there's one cardinal rule on Footfall. Anything goes as long as it doesn't get in the way of business. I'm someone who's been able to exploit that rule to the fullest. And in recent years, I've hit it so big that I've become a speck of sand in someone's green eye. They used to throw small wrenches into my dealings here and there, but now they've decided to really put their backs into it. Some rat's stolen my cargo, right out from under my nose in the seediest part of the Shadow Quarters. A crummy place, even for connoisseurs of Footfall's unique atmosphere. When I asked the Liege for protection, we had a mutual misunderstanding. I believe Vladame, in a most lamentable fashion, has forgotten his duties as guardian of the downtrodden and wronged. So I'm in desperate need of a new one. And you, Shireen, fit the bill perfectly. All I need is for you to drop by one dark corner of Footfall's Shadow Quarters and pound it into the thief's head that taking Heydari's property carries certain risks. So wait, you burned your bridges and now you want us to burn ours too? Surely a trifle like restoring cargo to its rightful owner won't change the Liege's disposition toward an esteemed figure such as yourself. Vladame is a reasonable man, and he knows better than to cut off his nose to spite his face. I mean, yeah, that is true. Alright, fine. Let's say hypothetically I am interested in this deal. What's my cut? I'm sure that my personal means can't compare to yours, Shireen, so I can't interest you with money. I can, however, offer you something else. My boundless knowledge. Surely you will appreciate the services of an expert on trading operations. Where I'm from, they call this kind of deal wisdom selling. On top of my personal talents and insight, I have at my disposal a whole network of schooled brokers, ready to procure anything from anywhere at the snap of a finger, be it from any world, the webway, or may the Exalted One preserve us from the schemes of his enemies. The warp itself. Heh, I'm starting to like her. Sure, why not? May the Exalted One bless you and your progeny. Jae instantly pulls out a data slate and shows you a map of Footfall. Then here's what we'll do. We shouldn't be seen together before we make it to the safe house. I'll head there first. I'll take my own special route so I won't be spotted. Right here. That's where those ashmags are keeping the stolen cargo. Out of the bar, over the bridge, and to the left. There, in the depths. You'll find a small courtyard through which you can get to the place. I'll be waiting nearby. You can come when it suits you, but the sooner you do, the better. I'll see you then, Shireen. Okay, so maybe that's actually the warehouse we passed earlier. We never did end up checking that out. And it does seem an apt place to keep stolen cargo. But yeah, I am intrigued. I think the Inquisitor back on our ship is also supposed to be one of our potential companions. But for whatever reason, he doesn't seem selectable in the current build. Might not be ready, might just be locked to certain parts of the story. Hard to say. Oh, look at that. The people who came to menace Jae were tied to the Anvers. And we got a name, Braska. We did not get a name for the previous 2 leaders we gunned down. So maybe there is more to the Anvers. Interesting.
An expected result.
The decanter used to contain a cheap amasec, which, for the sake of attractiveness, has obviously been enriched with a deodorizing agent. I feel so miserable, and not a soul around who would listen, shouted Gordei Skatov repeatedly. Gordie? Gordie. Alright, fine, I'll bite, but
I won't tolerate
give me a sec, let me
weakness.
just finish scanning for loot to purloin. Oh, out of machine write sets. Right. Sorry. The menu system of the Adeptus Amesicus looks eerily similar to the design of the internal scan of the fuel compartment. Someone has inserted new data onto the void ship's cogitator, left over from ancient times. Very resourceful. I approve. I'm sure Pascal hates it. Let's have a quick chat with Gordie. The flabby man in worn clothes is sighing sadly over a glass of murky booze. Only when he looks up at you do you notice his eyes. Large, piercing, and full of sorrow. A stark contrast to his unkempt appearance. Could it be that someone actually wishes to keep me company? Allow me to introduce myself. Gordei Skatov, architectural historian. My friend, you look so deeply despondent. Pray tell, what weighs upon you so? Gordie sighs heavily. Here I go again, pouring my heart out to have you disappear in 10 minutes, just like everyone else before you. But, alright, here's the story of Gordei Skatov, the unluckiest historian in the Imperium. I was born 2 sectors away from here. My family was quite influential, which allowed me to dedicate myself to my greatest passion, the history of Imperial architecture. I spent a number of years studying every scholarly work there was to find on this art, and then, once I had inherited my family's fortune, I traveled and documented the development of architectural thought on different worlds. Until one day, oh, that accursed and blessed day, until one day I came into possession of something quite special. Gordie pulls what looks like a book or an album with a homemade leather cover out of his bag. Both the pages and the binding look well worn. Here it is, my undoing. This is an authentic booklet titled Dwayne's Design, one of the thousands that were printed centuries ago, in the times of Footfall's construction. Oh, right, yeah, Parsimus Dwayne's original palace designs, before he passed away and the other rogue traders sort of did their own thing. Footfall's founder, Lord Parsimus, was obsessed with his creation's grand future. This booklet describes in detail what Footfall was meant to become upon its completion. Dozens of asteroids turned into glorious palaces and temples, massive bridges spanning the void itself, and the marvelous flying buttresses, the archivolts of the exterior arches, the elegant arrangement of balusters. And the interiors, poliphoras 10 stories tall and more than a mile long, cyclopean light tubes that catch the light of Furibundus and use it to brighten the hulls and the hearts of the asteroids, stained glass windows and mosaics, bas-reliefs and statues. Engrossed in his own description, Gordie stands up and starts tracing the outlines of arches and galleries with his hand. Emerging from his reverie, he catches himself, blushes slightly, and loudly flops back into a seat. I apologize. I got carried away. But you must understand how deep an impression this book left on me when my young self picked it up. I simply couldn't think about anything other than Footfall. I was ready to give my life just to see this incredible station. And of course, no matter how hard my parents tried to dissuade me, I still gathered all my savings and set out on a journey. I thought you said you inherited your fortune. But your parents were still alive? It was no easy feat to cross 2 sectors, especially for a common citizen, albeit one who has some resources at his disposal. I had to change one ship after another, at times being forced to stay on transfer worlds waiting for a vessel headed in the right direction, or for warp disturbances to subside. The voyage took me a total of 107 years. In real space-time, of course. For me, it was much less than that, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 35. And then, after all those years, having spent all of my savings, I reached my dream. And what did I see? A dump in place of the exquisite portico, metal anthills clinging to the columns, the marble tiles pilfered by paupers to use as cladding for their hovels. Gordei hangs his head. It's been a dozen years since I came here, and I still haven't recovered from the shock. I had suspected that not everything from the booklet would exist in reality, but I never expected to see Footfall in such a sorry state. It is like stumbling upon the horrible, decomposing corpse of your beautiful beloved. Yeah, that's a crying shame, both for you and for Parsimist Owain. It would have been quite the sight. But you're an architectural historian, are you not? Wouldn't you say that this is still part of Footfall's unique history? Gordei strokes his goatee in thought. Yes, Footfall's current appearance, slums fused together with the remains of majestic palaces, is a unique phenomenon. It would be curious to observe if other places have taken after it, thereby solidifying it as a new style of architecture, or if it still remains a local oddity. My word, you certainly know how to provide an unexpected perspective on things. Be that as it may, I just wanted to say, thank you for hearing me out. Over the dozen years I have spent on Footfall, not one person has hung around long enough to listen to my story to the end. It's such a delight to have shared everything that's been weighing on my mind. I'm poor as a church mouse, but I still have something to offer you as a token of my appreciation. After studying the booklet thoroughly, I discovered something interesting. A ciphered message scattered throughout its pages. Taking the form of a riddle, it described certain places of interest on Footfall. I believe it's the work of the booklet's creators. What if these riddles lead to something? A wondrous discovery. I will gladly share what I've been able to learn with you. If there's treasure out there, then why haven't you tried to claim it for yourself? I have, of course. But I'm an old man who's blind in one eye and can barely move his legs. I never found anything. But that doesn't mean there's nothing to find. Oh, fair enough. Tell me more. The first location from the riddles isn't far from here. It's a bridge that was supposed to go through the center of this district and into the void toward the neighboring asteroid. Only a couple of its spans were built, and even those lie in ruins. Still, if the cache survived after all those years, it is there somewhere. Okay, so a partially built bridge. Somewhere in the Shadow Quarters, it sounds like? The second location is the Lantern of the Great Cathedral. A lantern is a small tower on top of a dome. You've seen Footfall's atrium, haven't you? The whole atrium is just the nave of the former little cathedral. The Liege's entire so-called palace would have fit inside what was meant to be naught but a single room. The Great Cathedral, had it been built, would have been even bigger. But alas, its construction was just getting underway when Dwayne died, and the work stopped. The lantern from its dome, however, had already been built and survived. It was brought inside the atrium and dubbed the Chapel of St. Drusus the Warrior. Okay, that we do know. Yeah, that was just off to the right of the Liege's palace. And that's all I know. I wish you luck in your search. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. See you around, Gordei. Wow, gotta say, I was not expecting the conversation to take that kind of direction. That was fascinating. But sadly, the treasure hunt will have to wait, because we have just officially hit time, and I do need to wrap this up because it is currently 40 degrees, and I am dying. That said, we'll hit the pause button for now. I will take care of some off-screen bookkeeping, and we will pick up here next time, as we get to know Octavia, and then go on a good old-fashioned treasure hunt. Not to mention that whole thing with Jae, I suppose, but come on, treasure, pirates. Getting a new companion's all well and good, but kind of a distant third on our current list of priorities. See you then. Oh, and remember, although I do love playing Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, you can find out more about the game by visiting the official website. And if you'd like to help support the channel, then feel free to push the buttons that do the things, or maybe even check out the Patreon, the YouTube memberships, or the Nexus GG page. Links are in the description.